Okay. The Acton Conservation Forestry Committee meeting for February 20th. Start with a roll call. I think we're missing quite a few people, but I think we have a quorum, right? We have four of us. We've got a quorum. All right, approval of minutes from January 16th, 2018 meeting.
I wrote them, so I know what they say.
Have a motion?
Sure. I move we accept the minutes.
Second.
Second? I'll second it. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, old business, Hebo-Hibo Road. Tom has put together the history of how the Hebo-Hibo was come to its current state of affairs. If anybody wants to read that language, it's up here. We did send out a survey to abutters, and we've received 5 responses and 2 phone calls. Some people in favor and some not in favor, kind of 50-50 on that. Hoping to get more responses. 18 abutters in Acton on the Hebo-Hibo, so hopefully we can get some more response. Questions and concerns moving forward. Is this open to the public at this point? Is that what we're thinking, Tom?
Yes.
Okay, open to the public. Anybody have questions on the project?
What exactly is the Forestry and Conservation Committee looking to do with the Hebo-Hibo Road?
Well, what we're proposing to do is to improve it to a multi-use trail connecting up with Lebanon. Lebanon is also working on this same idea. Hopefully, but in this case, with the Hebo-Hibo, the landowner's owned to the middle of it, so it can't go very far without the landowners being on board with it.
Now, is it your intent to open it as a road?
No.
Or as a trail?
Trail.
Okay. For what purposes, other than walking?
Other than walking?
Yeah.
That hasn't been determined what the uses will be. I mean, walking will be one. As far as motorized uses, that hasn't been determined. That may be still, it's on the table. Is that what your question is? Will it have motorized? Yeah, I thought, yep, it has.
What currently is the status of the Hebo-Hibo Road? Is it closed? Is it discontinued? Because those are different.
I'm going to defer to Tom. He knows all the legalese on this.
Our preliminary research and then later research at the Registry of Deeds, Roland, we did find that the road was accepted as a county way. The Selectmen of Acton petitioned the county commissioners, and they initially, on the first go-around, they said, no, we're not going to consider it a county way, or whatever the term would be. And then upon petition by the Acton Selectmen, they did change their mind and gave the town permission to utilize it and designate it as a county way. I would imagine that would have made them eligible for some funding for maintenance or something, I don't know. And then in 1936, the selectmen again petitioned the road before the county commissioners and said, we would like to discontinue this road. And that went through as the petitioners desired. They closed the road. but they did retain public, so the road now became a public easement and subject to gates and bars was the terminology that we see scattered through this thing. The public easement being retained is just what it sounds like. It allows the public right-of-way to traverse the road. But the gates and bars, I think, if I intuit that correctly, would be the right of landowners that have lanes that intersect with the road to set up a gate and/or a bar, so to inhibit or prevent trespassers in that case from just wandering willy-nilly on other people's property. So we had some verbal communication with Dana Libby of Corner Post Survey and some correspondence between Dana and our land use attorney, Joe Lenkowski, which corroborated all the evidence I was able to dig up the other day at town meeting. So we feel pretty confident. Obviously, we didn't want to get 75% through this process and have that whole issue challenged or put into question. So we decided we had to nail that down. And that's what I tried to do with this bit of research the other day.
So what you're telling me is that in 1936, the town went to the county commissioners and wanted to discontinue
Yes,
the road.
yes.
Why was it on a warrant article to close the road? Why did the town have if they've already discontinued the road, why would the town put a warrant article on a warrant to close the road, which the town people voted to approve?
What is this instance?
That happened because I was there. Back in either the 70s or 80s, we voted to close the road. We didn't say discontinue.
You can't do both,
Because
because they're two different things.
the biggest problem we had was the fact that that bridge that goes over the stream
Yeah.
the stringers had been cut, and it was dangerous, and the town, if they didn't close the road, was going to be liable with anybody that got hurt on it. So they voted to close the road. And if you
Well-
say you want to reopen it now, or that it should have always been opened, it's no longer a road. So now, in order to reopen it as a road, you would have to have
No.
50-foot right of way up to there.
Wait,
You
wait.
don't have 50 foot.
I think,
You've only got 50 foot at the front. That's it.
I think, Roy, we're not considering this as a road. We're just establishing the fact that there is a public easement has been retained. I didn't, through the lawyer's office, nor from Dana Libby, did we ever hear tell of any, evidence to the contrary, so.
So what you're saying then is, even though we own to the center of the road, you're not going to allow us to use that stretch of property. We're starting to have damage at the cemetery from the vehicles going by. They're starting to damage the root systems of those trees. Those trees are iconic to the Maple Grove Cemetery.
I get,
We want to trim out all the other trees and just keep the maple trees along that, and they're getting damaged. And we've asked the guys who go up in there to please use the easement they were granted
Yeah.
on the opposite, the east side of the road, and instead they just keep moving into our side because we keep our side cleaned out.
well, we certainly sympathize with that. There are numerous abutters who have issues. You can, Colin would share some of that correspondence there.
We're also having problems where we've had at least one person threaten to sue us because people go into that dirt area there and they use dirt bikes and four-wheelers and they spin dirt up and rocks and they've started to damage some of the headstones that are right there, especially up close to the road. And we don't know what we're going to do. We're planning on relocating our stone wall to the other side of the streets to try to prevent that damage from continuing.
It's these kinds of issues, I guess, that I was hoping to put put to rest with the bit of research we've undertaken, but,
We're not trying to stop people from accessing their property in the back.
Right.
But we're trying to gain a level of control with confidence that it'll maintain, and we won't have to worry about, I mean, we've already had to chase the guy who's living out back and tell him, stop using the cemetery as an alternate road. That's why we put up chains and gates. We never used to have to do that. Now we have to.
Same gentleman, last year I stopped him using a chainsaw on our fracking trees. Because he wanted to clear the right, it's not his right of way, his right of way is on the opposite side. You've had enough, damages cannot be contained. We're state statute, plus we're obligated.
Can anyone put their hand on, Carl, you've got some copies of that letter. Maybe it's a good time to maybe read that out.
Yeah.
Just to,
Let's see.
so there's some clarity as to what our goals were as expressed through the abutters.
Besides reading it, you're suggesting that you guys send this over a copy in writing so that we can take it to our own attorney.
You received a copy,
No,
right?
I have not received anything, the only thing I got in the mail was that letter that I returned back to you guys, telling you to please excuse some of the meetings that you do have because I'm on board of finance. On top of that, we do not meet again until spring. And right now, I have not had a full board because you don't have a full board, because half of them are in Florida are on vacation. And all you've got is just two, you've got the president and the vice president at this point, and that's it. Our trustees are not here.
Clarity, would it help to read that out just to, so everybody understands what we would, what our
I know
goals
you
were?
have to have several meetings before you can even get this to go through. And then, like you said, we all have to agree because we own the middle, we own the front entrance.
Right, but there is the
And the
piece of,
easements, I have two easements on my property now. One's a verbal easement, I can only walk, I have to walk 1,250 feet to one of my easements. The other easement, I have a traffic easement. And that's, I have my own separate property. And there are two different easements, and they're written two different ways. An easement can be written up in 20 different languages, in 20 different ways. So I know one's written one way, and one's written another way.
well, we're trying to, obviously, trying to follow the trail of the proceedings of the governing bodies that had authority to render decisions on this. We've gone as far as we can go, and this new assertion that the road was public easement, Roy, would it be the case that the public easement was extinguished then? Is that your contention?
No, I don't think that the public easement was extinguished, right? It's the whole concept of, it's like you're going back to 1936, and I'm sitting here going, I was at the town meeting where they had it on the warrant, and they voted unanimously to close the road. They didn't even say discontinue. They just said close the road, because they didn't want they were afraid of liability, because like I said, somebody had cut strings on that wooden bridge that goes over the thing. And they were waiting for, somebody was gonna get hurt driving up in there.
Because I know I saw a paper that said they closed both that one and the Edgecombe Road at the same time. And that they closed the Hebo High Road because it was dangerous, period. And that came from the selectmen's office.
Yeah.
In the 1936 Commissioner's report, they do mention the closure of Edgecombe Road and the new road, as they called it back then. But it was also clear from the language in that bit of history that they did retain a public easement subject to gates and bars.
Yeah, I saw that.
So this new business about a town meeting that closed the road, it never was a road after 1936. So I don't know.
Why would the town put an article on consider it to be a road.
Can anyone put their finger on the,
I will certainly do so.
okay, that would be great.
All I know is I remember it because I was there. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, it was 70s, 80s, somewhere in that time frame.
David?
In the 1936 discontinuance, in the warrant, did the warrant specify that the road would be discontinued, but public easement would be retained?
In the 1936 verbiage from the county clerk's office, basically recounts the fact that the Acton selectmen went to the county and had a plea that the road be closed, and but a public easement was to be retained, subject to gates and laws.
So it would be closed? I thought you said discontinued originally.
Well,
Because that's a different, that's why I'm asking, if they're two different things. If I recall from my road committee days, if on a road discontinuance, prior to 1965, if you didn't retain, if you didn't say in the warrant language, we're retaining an easement, it wasn't inferred that the easement was retained. After 65, I believe if you discontinue a road, this is going, it's on the merit, if you discontinue a road, the easement's automatically retained, no matter what. So I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
I have nothing, I'm just going back to the whole road committee days, I'm just.
Well, I believe
What
that's
exactly-
what subject to gates and bars means. Don't we have language from Joe that the terminology of subject to gates and bars, that phrase means public easement retained
I'm
essentially?
I am betting I've got, because as part of the road committee many moons ago, I ended up with all this stuff, got all this stuff from Lorraine, all the discontinuances and all this stuff out of the whole road. I bet I still have some of that stuff, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be any use or not.
You want me to read this out, Colin? It's a
Yeah.
short paragraph.
Yeah, sure, read it out.
This is from the April term in 1937, after they had initially heard the Select Board of Acton petitioning the,
Discontinuance.
for discontinuance of New Road and Edgecombe Road in Acton. We, the selectmen of the, where the fuck is that? We, the selectmen of the town of Acton in said county, respectfully represent that the following roads are unused and unfit for travel, and that the continuation of these roads in the town of Lebanon have already been closed by your board, referring to the county commissioners. Also, we have been instructed by the town at its annual town meeting to work with you in the closing of them, and we hereby petition you to proceed to close the same. Maybe that's,
See, once again, we're talking two different terms.
well,
You have discontinuance and you have closure, and they do not mean the same, they don't mean the same thing.
No, they do not.
hold on there.
I mean, if you go back to 1936, 37, they petitioned for the discontinuance of the road, and then they turn around and in the same verbiage or same conversation, same paper, whatever, they use the word closure. They don't mean the same thing.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know if you are,
No,
Roland, but
not
I'll just read you again.
Closure and discontinuance. It doesn't take a rocket science to tell that they're not the
Turn
same.
around and look at the state statute for closures of roads and privacy of roads, and the whole line has, it's laid out right there and everything. And that's where I got a lot of my information from. And if you guys don't do the homework, that's not my fault.
They're doing the homework.
Well, I don't think there's anyone proclaiming that we're sitting here all saying the same thing, that we don't understand what exactly had happened in the past, and it's really over our heads. I mean, we're trying to understand what has happened in 36, what's happened in the 70s, what's happened in the 80s and 90s.
Well, no, it ain't
So-
something, they do lots
What do
of
you mean?
those.
But the point is if we're sitting here saying that it's coming down to the lawyers that are making up their minds as to what actually happened and what legally everyone had the right to do, then please, let's talk about it and just say that we're on the same team here. There's no accusations of anyone trying to make anything happen. So, let's just back off just a little bit, I guess, and say that we're here trying to understand what has happened in the past on none of our watches. So let's just find out what's happened and move forward with it as best as we understand. So let's find out about that, I guess, and just work together with it. That's all we're asking at this point.
Tom's asking if the board be addressed instead of just talking.
Can I speak for a minute?
Sure.
Further paragraph in the 1936-37 work, and in pursuance of the foregoing adjudication, i.e., that's the determination that after a full hearing of all the facts, testimony, and arguments by them presented and having maturely considered the same, we were of the opinion and adjudged and do hereby adjudge and determine that common convenience and necessity do require that said petition be granted. That being the petition to close the road or discontinue the road. And in pursuance of the foregoing adjudication, we, the county commissioners, aforesaid, proceeded to make said discontinuance as follows. The road leading from South Acton Baptist Church to the Lebanon Town Line is hereby discontinued, subject to gates and bars. The road leading from Miller's Corner to Lebanon Town Line, known as the Edgecombe Road, is hereby discontinued, subject to gates and bars. Given under our hands this 7th day of July, 1936. And then they recite the county commissioners at the time. So that's as far as we can go in conveying to you what we found. As to the interpretation of that, I was hoping there was some clarity to this, but if terms have changed in meaning, I'm not going to go there. But this is what we have for evidence to hopefully proceed in a responsible way with what we were proposing in the letter to the abutters. Can you read that letter to the abutters, Carl? Maybe for clarity's sake?
This letter?
Yeah.
The Town Conservation and Forestry Committees of Acton and Lebanon, Maine are currently discussing a proposal for a recreational trail on the Hebo-Hibo Road. Both towns have determined, on the advice of their respective land use lawyers, that a public easement still exists permitting public access along the road. In consideration of your ownership of abutting property to the Hebo-Hibo Road, we are hoping that you'll respond and share your concerns with the committees involved. Our primary goal is to foster a sense of respect for the road as a recreational source and to curtail further abuse. It is hoped that as more people enjoy the existing trail, a greater sense of its value will emerge. If you would like to be informed of upcoming meetings, please fill out the bottom portion of this letter and return it to us via the envelope enclosed. If you had any questions, please contact the committee. Thank you for your interest. We hope to hear from you. I guess, the question I have for the cemetery committee, I don't think you're happy with the situation that's there presently, or that's what I sort of gathered from your conversation.
We want to find a way to try, we were actually asked by the state troopers to block that road. We were asked to because they've had a lot of problems with people going up in there. A guy used to have a house up in there right close to the Lebanon line, and they utterly destroyed it, right? And, but there was other issues too. But, they asked us, the state troopers asked us to please block that roadway off so that, to stop the damage that was being done down in there. People were going down in there partying, they were getting all kinds of issues. I read this thing on public easement, and I have to agree with you guys as much as it bothers me to some extent. Because after 1936, it says here very, very plainly that anything closed after 1976 automatically has an easement, automatically. And there's no way that I see, unless the terminology between a closed road and discontinued road changes that, I don't see how we can really fight that. Okay? We're not really trying to fight, we're trying to understand. And like I said, we've had damage from, I've seen them do it, the four-wheelers will set out close to our road, and they'll just spin their tires in circles, they're spitting rocks and everything else, and we've had damage to some of our systems. We were hoping, like I said, to move the snow wall to the other side of the trees and save 1 the trees, and two, stop some of the damage being done to the stones. That's the two biggest things.
I mean, we made that decision less than 2 years ago to do that, to move everything over. If we were just getting ready to move everything come spring, we were gonna make that decision and move everything over. Which we're getting, like he said, we're getting ready to get sued. We've got, that's the only access we have right now for extra lots. I mean, and like I said, we're by the state statute, plus their own laws and bylaws that they make. The cemetery itself, and the church is almost 200 years old. And all these bylaws were made prior to even us getting there. And one of them is to protect the resources at all costs, as the trustees and officers, that's our job. Just on the bylaws, not including the state statutes on top of it.
We were asked to issue a 50-foot right-of-way for the man to sign on to a 50-foot right-of-way, but when we checked with the state, we actually found out the state doesn't want cemeteries giving away any of the property that they have. We're not allowed to even give you a written right-of-way. So that's where it gets confusing for me, is because where it's cemetery property, not just somebody's property, it's cemetery property. Legally, we could stop burying people on that one side of the thing. It becomes very confusing for me. I already know that that's why lawyers make big money. And I don't have to worry about that money.
Because the other thing we were thinking about is a fence. You cannot have one right in the middle. I already talked to the neighbor across our way. He said the same thing. That's why he's got no trespassing signs on his side, because in a rail that goes through, because he's got issues going through it. People don't think. We got ATVs that come off where they come off down Farm Road, come across and come right through. We watched over 100 of them one day come through. And then all we do is call game wardens, and they came out and did their thing.
They did what?
It's just getting ridiculous. And then you can't, if you're gonna open it, you have to make a decision whether you're gonna open it as a trail or open it, access as far as other ways it is, because you can't have both ways either. It's one or the other.
This committee has no authority to limit
But you-
the type of
but you
vehicle.
got to, when you reopen it, you have to specify how you reopen it and what you're gonna have on it. That's kind of law, that's in the state statute was as far as the roadways go.
We're not
If
reopening a
there is an
road.
easement on it already, then there is no
Right.
reopening of
But you
anything.
have to,
I agree. And it does state right in here that if it's a public easement, any improvements done to it are open to the public, and you cannot stop them.
I mean, we're all speaking the same language and we all have the same concerns. So we can voice everything we can about all the damages and we can lament what's happening. We're here trying to just say, can we get together in order to move this project forward in some way? We're rehashing the idea that there's damage happening. We all agree with that. So what can we do to move forward with it? What can we do to help alleviate it? Let's not talk about the damage any longer. Let's talk about what we might do to curtail it. That's all.
We totally embrace the problem as you described it, Louis. And this is by opening it up to people who care about its, or to make it more of a public recreational asset to the town. If we keep, ignoring what's going on out there and just wring our hands over it, I don't think it's going to it won't improve probably, and it's apt to get worse. But if we can educate some folks who are out there abusing it, and I think I hope they're the minority, they might not be now, but we hope to make that a minority, and by having a little teaching happening out on the Hebo-Haiba Road, we're hoping to have people understand the value of it and to take care of it, to embrace that in the way they care for it. We're certainly not trying to lock horns with the Maple Grove Cemetery, nor anyone else who lives along that or owns along that road. we're,
Just out of curiosity, the bridge that crosses the stream is a privately owned bridge, is it not?
couldn't answer that, Roland.
No.
It's not a town bridge.
It's private now.
Any improvement that's put on, this is back to road agent, you can address this probably better than I. If you put material on a public way like that, it is still not, it becomes public in and of itself. It's part of the road.
If I build a bridge across the stream and I decide to tear that bridge down, I'm just giving you a what if, I'm not.
Yep, no, I'm not,
I'm playing devil's advocate.
yeah.
Okay? If the owner of that bridge, what's his name? Who?
Terry Green.
Terry Green, decides to tear that bridge down, then what? Just out of, what do we do then?
Terry does not own that bridge. Upon putting it, no, Terry owns both sides of the road, and he owns to the center line of the road, but by building and putting material onto the roadbed right-of-way, he can proclaim he owns the bridge. He does not.
Okay.
That's my belief. I'm not a lawyer either. If I were to put gravel onto a road and then walk away on a public way, it becomes part of the road, and he might tell you in conjecture that he can come take it back, or that it's his bridge, or that he built that bridge. But it's not my understanding that he can proclaim to be able to just say that he owns it and dictate its use at that point. Specifically, it's the use of it that we're asking about. That's my understanding.
In that circumstances, who would have liability if somebody got injured or they ran their truck off the side?
I really don't know the answer to that, but if it's a public way, I would say it would be no different than if it happened on anyone's property or on a public road. It would be no different. It is, and I don't know the answers.
I still remember being at the town meeting and they were discussing closing it. And they said, yeah, we gotta close it because somebody cut the stringers on that bridge, and if somebody gets hurt, because it's a road, town road, town's gonna be liable.
I mean, we've sat here and we've talked about,
Now you're saying that it was never a town road, so when they changed the name to Eagle Eye Road, they shouldn't have, because it wasn't. It's still a new road then. I never wanted to make it Eagle Eye.
yeah.
I don't know. DOT has it this evil eye, well, they've closed it 3 times, so.
But the fact that we've gone since the 30s not truly understanding what by subject of gates and bars means we've got, what now, 60, 70 years worth of people doing things that weren't quite fully legally true or understood or knew the ramifications of it. So we're trying to understand it and find good middle ground. So I don't know the answer to any of those questions legally speaking either. But if we're sitting here trying to kind of dig into it, here, below these many years later.
Our concern is purely, we want to try to protect the side of the cemetery. We would like to stop the damage to the tree roots. Those vehicles riding right along there really, they're going to start to kill those trees. And we really don't want that.
Understandable.
Our plan was to move the stone wall to the other side of the trees, like I said, so that we could at least protect the. But at the same time, we've been trying to be good neighbors. I know people try to get to their places out back. People who own property, they want to cut trees, they want to cut wood,
We're gonna log it in.
a mess.
Well,
We don't know the answers for sure.
What a mess. The town obviously doesn't need the cost of maintaining that road at any level, because, God, that's expensive.
I don't know where to go from here, Kyle.
Well, I mean, I think it's good to hear your concerns. I mean, we all have concerns about that road. I know someone that owns property on that road that had burned vehicles on that property and had people running mud trucks through it. And so there's a lot of concern, and I think that's why we're here. Can we make that road into something positive rather than something that's negative for a lot of people? And that's really what our goal is try to make it into something that Maple Grove doesn't get torn out. and other people's property doesn't get torn up. And our hopes is that by making it a recreational trail, even if it does have motorized usage, that the motorized usage becomes respectable. I know that sounds maybe far-fetched in your eyes, but recently they had a meeting in Sanford last week in regards to the railroad track trail, where they've been having a lot of issues, and they had a meeting, and the motorized usage folks were there, and the way it was put to them is, we either have to work this out or we have to close the trail, and now they're willing to work with them. They're saying, yeah, we got to figure it out. I mean, we can't put all this money into making a nice surface for people to, whether it is motorized or non-motorized, and then tear it up and not have something that people want to use. And I think, it's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight on the Hebo-Hibo, but I do think over time, we could make that into something that lots of people in Acton would like to utilize. People like to hunt out there, people log out there, people want to ride a bike out there, or take their kids out there. There's a town forest property out there that probably most people in town don't even know is there. Has the headwaters of the Little River on it. It's quite nice out there, and I think what we're trying to do is to maybe make that into something that's a benefit to the town rather than being something that's just a drag to people.
There used to be a really big beaver pond out there. That was a long time ago.
You know what now?
Beaver pond. There used to
Out
be a
there.
big beaver
Yeah.
pond out there.
Yeah.
Used to have 4 or 5 big huts. That was a while.
I mean, it's quite a stretch of woods out there when you think about it. From one end of the Hebo-Hibo to the other, that's quite a bit of habitat for lots of critters, and it's a lot of undeveloped forest land in this town, in the town of Lebanon. And I think we're all on the same page here. I mean, we'd like to see something happen there that makes it better for the community.
Now, if we were to relocate that stone wall, not to the center of the road, but just over on the other side of that line of trees there, so that we could protect them a little bit at least from the traffic, I don't believe we'd be interfering with that. But is that some kind of violation of the public easement? We wouldn't be stopping the traffic. I'm talking about, moving it probably 6 or 8 feet from where it is to the other side of the trees. I
Is
don't
the stone
envision
wall
it.
strictly around the cemetery, or does it extend out into the woods behind the cemetery?
That just, it encloses 2 sides of the cemetery. On the west side is a wooden rail.
Okay, just curious.
Once you go beyond the wall, near the bank, it's like a bridge.
Yeah, it is literally,
Less than 10 feet.
the stone wall along the new road and then up across the backside of the cemetery.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I would think the answer to that would probably have to do with the width of the right-of-way, would it not?
Because there's no right of way. See, it's.
Excuse me, let me rephrase that. I don't want to get into the vocabulary of it again.
I realize.
The width of the easement.
Public easement.
Yes,
Public easement.
sorry, yeah.
There actually is no width described that I've seen. I've been reading through this.
I found it in the 1850 work. It was a three-rod public easement.
3 rod.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, even then, though, it's not 3 rod, because even if you eliminate, said that, okay, it wasn't discontinued properly, so therefore we go back to the original boundary, those stone walls are 3 rods, not in the water spots. And I'm only talking in the first 300 or 400 feet going down to the backside of the cemetery. There's spots there where I don't think there's more than 35 feet between the walls.
Back several years ago, when I was a trustee, not an officer, we were approached about measuring from the stone wall across to the stone wall. At that time, before all access was in Alaska, the widest part from our lowest part of our stone wall to the neighbors was 10 feet. I just recently did that, not that long ago, and it's almost double. You because they don't stop, they just keep on trucking. They go over as far as they can to the neighbors, and the neighbor is very upset. He didn't realize by letting the person have the access that this would be so much damage.
Well,
I don't think a trail is necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know. So,
A lot of work to be
so
done.
legally, if it's a public easement, then it's supposed to be 3 rods wide.
You don't have 3 rods going up through the Eagle Harbor Road.
It-
In most places, you're lucky if you've got 2.
True, but where it was discontinued, it says.
Doesn't matter.
If you make an improvement to it, the public has the right to use it, but it doesn't say you can't make it. And what I'm saying is where there's stone walls are legal boundaries. Farther down that road, there's very few stone walls. I've walked down through there.
There's a lot of stone walls that are not necessarily, easily seen.
That's correct.
I know for a fact, I used to hunt up there a lot,
I've fallen over.
and,
Where'd that come from?
there's spots up, going up that road that, you're lucky if there's 20 feet
folks,
from the swamp to a nice, tall hill.
we have other items on the agenda, but I'm hoping we can continue this conversation with you folks. And maybe the way to move toward a resolution is if you folks have a lawyer that you retain, or would you get the help of Joe Lankowski, a town?
See, that's where it gets complicated. We're a nonprofit and we have, everybody's a volunteer.
Yeah.
And there's no real funds with the Cemetery Association for legal representation.
Yeah.
If we decided to do that, we would have to say, okay, we gotta fight this. But the truth is, I don't know, without knowing what date we had that town meeting, I'm pretty sure it was in the late 70s.
I'll find it.
But,
Good.
Because I've seen it.
my memory could be right out there. I don't know.
You're looking well, Roy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think the way to move toward a resolution of this, I may be wrong, but if you can draft up some points that need to be addressed, and we'll sit down again soon, and try to work through what you're proposing through the determinations that we've made so far, and if there are outstanding opinions that have to be given, the town is somehow implicated or involved, given that there is a public easement retained. It's retained by you and I and everybody in this room. So somewhere in there, maybe there's leeway for doing something along the lines of what Lois has described of moving the wall. I don't know if that's subject to a town meeting determination. I honestly don't know.
See, the thing is, though, the state also maintains us, that's part of the issue. We can't go against what the state says, because I can get just as much hot water as not. And when, like he said, when we're given property, they just can't give it back. And we were given that back in the 1900s, that's been around since 1800 and something. That's not my fault, that happened whenever new state statutes and old state statutes got together in the 70s and 80s and decided what they have to do and what they can't do. Our issue with being Kings is that we have, technically, to do any work around the cemetery, you have to stay 25 feet away from the water pump. That's probably part of the reason why they went to the metal and why we didn't, why everything didn't move over. Because even when the state was working out there, because that road has been homes through time, they would not touch the cemetery area. They skipped right by. It went from the edge of the person who abuts us. They said they can't touch the Evo, and they went right up above us. They have to stay 25 feet away from all cemeteries.
Roy, I don't know if I have those
And
actually in
that's
chronological
not
order or not.
laws and stuff.
It
I think
doesn't matter. I probably wouldn't understand.
It's not fun, and it's not easy. It's like you guys have to do what's best for the town. Because I wear 5 hats in this community. You guys have to do what's best for the town. I'm taking off my hat, and I have to do what's best for the Maple Grove Cemetery Association, because that's my state of SCP, my first hat. As much as I was on other committees in town, my lawyer goes back to that one. My first great-grandfather planted in there, and that was 10, 12 generations back, at least. And that's part of the reason why Roy and I are members. That's part of why they're members. They have their actual members. I mean, most of the people in town are members. As long as you have somebody who's buried there, you're a member of the association. And that can lead to anybody coming in and talking, and anybody can do whatever they have to do. We don't meet all the time. We meet in the spring, because one, the church is cold, and two, that's our meeting. We don't have fires in there, obviously. So you can't get the trustees in all the offices right now.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll keep working on it, we'll keep working with you, and, we'll let you know when we're...
It's a good idea.
The reality,
Trail is a very, very good idea.
I like the idea of it, I really do. It's just,
Yeah.
we gotta find a way of taking that 1/10 of 1% that like to mess things up for everybody
You know the
else.
what?
First cabin, I know the individual that built that first cabin.
Oh, yeah.
He used to be a cop down in Cary. And you're right, they tore that up.
Yeah.
They partied up there. He even put a chain or cable across
Table,
where his, it went up over the hill like this. You didn't go up that unless you had full drive.
The game wardens even came to us and said, is there any possible way the town can put a fence even beyond the first one built up there? And I said, you have to take that from the town, because they just subdivided 3 years ago, on the Lebanon side, they ripped down the fence, so they could have access and play games. They got caught, the fence got impounded, the truck got impounded, the guy got to go to jail. But other than that, it's not fun for us either.
It's kind of lawless out there right now, but maybe we're trying to work the other way, make it a little less lawless,
Everybody seems to wanna go to
It
the
is.
extreme
Good.
direction.
Good choice of words.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
Sorry if we
we need to have all of it running out like that
That's
for our
okay.
trustees and officers in June.
Yep.
Other than
buying
that,
into what you've already
this
told
will
me.
stay where
It's
it's
not a
at.
problem.
Well, I tried to highlight where there's something
Okay, we'll keep in touch.
with these arrows, but give me a ring and I'll
But we
come
did,
in here
well,
some.
we did take a vote though. I just don't remember what year it
We'll
was.
have to find out how that impacts what.
Because I remember being here when they did it.
Thank you.
I could even tell you who cut the stringers on the bridge that night.
Thanks, Roy.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right,
Sorry if
good to see you.
missed you guys, I'll,
No, you didn't.
No,
Good.
that's what we're here for.
I would love, I would love to let them go down through, I know snowmobilers use it, four-wheelers use it, I don't have a problem with that. It's just, we gotta worry about what's happening at the cemetery.
Understood.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you, Roy.
Good night. Any more questions? Andy? You're here for the next agenda item, I know you are. Okay. Town Farm Road Management Plan. Steve's got some updates for us on that, I think.
Now that we have a federal budget, at least for a few more weeks, we have money in the cost share plans, the cost share program. I made contact with the Maine Forest Service and got information on the way the grant process works. The language is a little bit different for towns through the Project Canopy program as for private landowners. So I do want to go back to the article that we drafted, because it's now, they're calling it a match for a certain amount of dollars as opposed to giving a dollar per acre number for the management plan. So anyway, there's a little bit of mechanics of how we wrote the warrant article that may need to be changed based upon the verbiage of the way the grant process works. But they have now opened up the application process will be opened up here in another month or so, and to be applications in by, I think it's the beginning of April for awarding about a month later, something to that effect. So again, I'm trying to gather the information from Augusta as to exactly what the verbiage is, how the process works, make sure all the training is there, and then come back to our article and bring the correct verbiage in on
Is it
that.
going to work time-wise in terms of our timeline on this?
Well, if the answer is by, the second, I mean, again, this has all got to do with whether or not Augusta gets back in touch with me fast enough, but I should know more about how the process works and what they're calling the quote-unquote town match. Again, without going too far backwards, the way it works if you're a private citizen looking for this same cost share is the state gives a certain dollar per acre number multiplied by the lot acreage, and that is then set aside for you as to be meant to be a 75% cost share of a fair market value of a plan. When you're working for a town, evidently, the way that this process works is they're calling it a 50% match. So now my question is to go back to Augusta and say, it's a match for what? Is it a match toward a certain acreage of the property? How is that number determined? Meaning, is this now based upon a fair market value? So I don't know that the verbiage that we have drafted a couple of weeks back and put to the town is the correct mechanism just yet, but I should have something on that within a few days.
Few days, perfect.
Again, this is pending Augusta, and then I can bring back the idea to us and say, did we word this correctly? Is there some change that we should make, hopefully before the second? But we now know there's funding, and they've given me some verbal assurances that the application process is not that big of an issue. The granting is almost a rubber stamping. So it's just a matter of the mechanism on our part, really.
Okay. Okay, good. So the 17th is the meeting with the Warrant and Finance and Board of Selectmen for final warrant finance recommendation would be on the 27th. So we seem to be in a good timeline.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Discussion on the management plan. David?
You have a copy of the warrant article? Yeah?
It's
been drafted?
Yeah.
We put something to,
Late.
we put something to Michelle last week, Tom, was it?
Yeah.
I don't have it on me, but
My copy's out in the truck, but you all should have received that.
Paraphrase it, or is it pretty much?
I can skip out and get that if you want to.
I mean, I don't,
I didn't see it. You seen it?
I think I'm a little late anyway, the voice like
I couldn't get that.
It was,
Well, if we gotta change it anyway.
right, well, the idea had to do with, and again, this is very much a paraphrasing, having to do, like I just mentioned, with the scenario by which a private citizen would apply for the similar grant. The idea was that there is funding for this plan, so the warrant article had to do with, will the town vote to how did we word it, Tom? I mean, we talked about the 25% that we presume to be the remaining, which may now be 50, but it also had to do with the remaining funding coming from
Forest Reclamation.
any presumed forest harvest that may or may not take place type of thing, so.
that paperwork is out in my truck. I'd have to get it to him.
You can't pull up the email on your phone that we sent out the other day, can you?
Yeah, I probably could.
So,
The one from Michelle? That I CC'd to you?
so the article doesn't have anything about timber harvest in it at this point?
It's
No,
just
well,
approving or
again-
not approving a funded plan by the town. It didn't break down what the plan would include at all, right?
Right, well, what I'm trying to accomplish, Dave, is that the plan itself is meant to take an inventory of the property, not just of any timber that's on the piece, but any wildlife, any, cultural, any assets that this property has on it is meant to be brought into this plan. And in order to find out what the town will do with this property, you first need to know what the property has on it. So the idea is that this plan is not presumed to say that we're going to go out there and do A, B, C, and D until we have an idea what's going on at this point. I mean, there are obviously ideas to say that if there's timber improvement that can be had to be done, to bring that back to the town, that would then create some revenue and pay for the remaining 25% or whatever the scenario was, is kind of this rough thought process behind it, because we're trying not to come back and say, let's request the money for a full plan. I guess we're kind of just juggling we're juggling the cost share scenario without coming back to the town and saying, hey, lay out a couple of $1,000s to justify the plan and guarantee the plan before the plan happens. We're trying to work with the project, the grant.
Feel for it, thank you. I mean, why I'm here, I mean, just briefly, why I'm here is more, and I don't know if I'm premature or if it's something that's, it sounds like it's something that will be looked at as part of the, as part of the plan, not necessarily done, but, I'm looking at this purely from, I put on my outdoorsman hat on all of this, as somebody that had lived here all my life and traversed about every bit of it, every bit of land in Acton. I look at everybody here, I've been lucky enough to traverse everybody's land that's sitting at this table right here. I mean, I've been everywhere, and, as an avid sportsman, and I've had growing concern over the years at, a lot of how I've seen Acton change from a conservation point of view. As for habitat for wildlife, I obviously, as somebody that's interested in science, I look at it from a science point of view as well. 40, 50 years ago, there used to be several deer wintering areas in Acton, for instance. There was a study that just came out by a Colby professor in 2015, and I can't remember what, I should know him, but he worked with Jerry Levine on a lot of the state's plans and all of that stuff. But long story short, he finished a complete survey of the deer wintering areas, mapped it all out in the whole state of Maine, and Acton had now, in 2015, had 0 deer wintering areas. There's some left in Chapley, there's some left in Lebanon, there's a big hole in Acton, and I know Acton's had a lot of valuable, mixed timber. It didn't get hit by the 47 fire and all of that. I mean, it's been and I certainly respect people's rights to do with things that they want to do with their land, you know what I mean? But the bottom line is it all has an overall effect on the wildlife, and I look at the deer specifically, and I look at that piece, I'm very familiar with that piece, and that's one of the few pieces of property right now that is really good, when you talk about the critters, that it's really great deer habitat now, and as well as a lot of upland birds and so forth. I mean, it's awesome. And I look at it and I see, and that's what we have. We have these little pockets now that are left, and nobody knows more than you traverse out everywhere as a forester. But I worry. I mean, we see it all the time, that in the ups and downs, the crashes and the rises in the wildlife populations, and specifically the deer, and it has to do with no wintering areas. In the winters that are tough, the populations crash because they don't have any wintering areas. When it's an easy winter like this is relatively, they do all right, but it's a constant crash, up and down, up and down. The state's research is some of the most premier, the best research in the country. And that, the best wintering area obviously is 50 to 70% coniferous forest, 35 feet or greater, with more immature mixed in hardwoods. And that would be great. We would be ideal for that, but of course, that's not the nature of how cutting goes nowadays. People, I understand, there's good money in it. They want to go in, get all they can get. A lot of them are the ancestors of people that originally owned it. They don't have any real connection to the land, so they just go in and take every bit of value they can off it. So then what grows back? Grows back habitat that's not great for a lot of creatures on the long term, because you cut all the softwoods, and Steve knows more about this than I do, I'm sure, but the hardwoods, sprout up in droves and the softwoods can't. So they overtake, and that's what we have a lot. We have a lot of, this small, almost 100% return of the forest is, these hardwood whips, which is not, it's ideal for bear. This is why we've seen a big rise in the bear populations in this area. It has mirrored the cutting practices, which is another big predator of deer in the fawns, have high fawn mortality with bear in the spring. So it's been tough to watch over the last, I'm 53 years old and, been in the woods since I was little, and it's just been hard to watch. And this, since I'm a taxpayer, I feel like I have maybe a little bit more control. It's kind of my land too, in a tiny little bit.
Yep.
So I just wanted to speak my mind on it from that perspective. It is a little nook that's pretty ideal right now, and you go in there and inevitably take a lot of that canopy. We don't have strong yards down here, wintering areas down here anyway compared to up north, because they are more spruce oriented. We have to do what we can with the pine and the hemlock, but any plan that would go in there and do a lot there I'm just against, and that's the long version, and I won't say any more, but that's why I'm here.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, to give you an idea to at least assuage a little bit of the fear, the way the process would go is anytime a forester would write a plan, if he's doing his job right, he or she are doing their job right, the first thing that you have to do is you have to have a pretty good interview and have a good idea of what the goals are from the landowner in the first place. So what do you as a landowner want to do with your property? In this case, it's you, it's everyone at this table, whoever it happens to be within this town. So if you have an idea that this is what this property would like to be used for, then this inventory, again, not just timber inventory, but wildlife inventory, habitat inventory, all those things come to play in the plan, and it is what you're looking for and measuring when you're out there doing the field work to bring this plan together. The plan does include recommendations, but any recommendation that one would put into a plan has got to take into account the goal of the landowner in the first place. Someone can recommend to go out there and say, if this timber is dying or this timber is healthy, and you can give recommendations for health or whatever it happens to be, but you have to give the recommendations toward the landowner's goal or the plan is no good at all. So I guess all I can say to you is that bring forth any goals that you have. That way when an inventory, and again, I'm using the term a little loosely, it doesn't have to be timber inventory, but when someone is taking an idea of what the assets are on a parcel of property, and then where one might manage it, or what direction one might take it, you have to have the goal of the landowner in mind as you're out there in the field looking for those things. Someone who wants to manage your property for, hardcore timber value as if you were some commercial timber landowner from northern Maine is going to treat their property radically different than someone who would be a small landowner who is a primarily deer hunter or bird hunter from Acton, Maine, or any version in between. So, any goals that you think would be coming about or be voiced toward, hey, keep an eye open for this when you're out there, get written right into the plan, and then you bring that about when any recommendations are put forth for any activity at all afterwards.
So that process of, working through the plan and having a voice, so to speak, that'll be at your regular meetings once this is adopted at town meeting, if this is voted in at town meeting, then will the plan be refined? Is it going to be refined before you go to town meeting?
We talking about June town meeting is in right off the bat?
When is this happening?
Well, right now, we're only talking about trying to acquire the mechanism for the cost share to get the plan written in the first place.
Gotcha.
So we're talking about like a year from now with anything actually happening on the face of the earth outside of the actual measuring and mapping and things like that.
So do we sit down with your team here, with your board, and state our concerns, our hopes, our dreams, our goals?
Yeah.
Because you guys all know me very well. I love to have my opinion. So I just don't want to miss out on it.
Well, I guess, I don't want to speak for anyone, but this is usually my process, and if I'm the one writing the plan, then I'll be looking for that feedback.
Yeah, we'd have a meeting that would be focused on that,
Okay.
and we'd put it out there to the
Yeah.
community. Come in, we're gonna talk about the forest management plan, if you've got thoughts and ideas, bring them in, we'll,
So, I mean, again, I'm trying to look at this and say, if there is some mechanism within the state in order to help pay for this plan, we do want to go through the proper process, we want to have everyone understand what's happening, we want to know what's going on out there. But I'm trying not to overstep my bounds and put the cart before the horse and say, if A, then B, then at the end of this, there's this big clear cut. I'm not trying to inflame anything like that at all. But right now, we're trying to simply put forth enough language in order to acquire the cost share from the state to help pay for the plan. Anything beyond this is still completely speculation yet, and I'm trying to, if the state were to pay 100% valuation of a plan, then the language would simply be, go to the state, get some money. Does the town approve the committee to write a warrant article to go get the money to write a plan? Yes, okay, great, bring the plan back. A year later, we decide if we do something with it or not. But the finer levels of the article right now are, how much does the state pay? If the state doesn't pay 100%, what do we do with this? How do we write it into the article? That's really all we're dealing with right now.
That helps, thank you.
Yep.
I came to the, I think it was the November meeting, the
Yes.
December meeting.
Yeah.
And Tom and Steve weren't at that meeting, and I kind of voiced some of the same concerns. One of my thoughts would be in developing the plan, that maybe the plan contains some type of timeline.
Mhm.
So that even if you did develop a plan, you might not have any cutting or any maintenance carved into that plan for, say, another 5 years.
Correct.
Because one of my concerns is simple, that there's been a lot of cutting back in the last few years. The other town forest on Eagle Highway Road was cut in 2012-ish.
I don't remember the year, but somewhere about, that seems late.
yeah, that's probably pretty close.
Is it close? or
Yeah,
what?
yeah, that's close.
4 or
Yeah.
5 years ago, whatever
Yep.
it was done.
Yeah.
I just look at the recreational value of our town forest. And once you cut it, even if you're doing a maintenance cut or, promoting growth or what have you, you're gonna have an initial shock where that recreational value for hunting is diminished. Because you're gonna be taking cover out of the woods, you're gonna be taking potential feed out of the woods. So I look at it as more of a balance. We've got one town forest that was cut 5 years ago, and it's now in the process of regenerating. I'd like to see the plan kind of coincide with that, so that before we cut our other town forest, this one's had some catch-up time. I think it's like good stewardship.
Right.
Kind of balance those two.
Again, I don't presume, without having done any inventory or gotten the goals from townspeople, I don't presume to do anything at this point in time, other than to say, what do we have out there? This is the what part of the question. I do know that it was longer than 5 years for sure. It was probably more like 10. But the theoretical question that I'll put to you guys is if you have a certain health of a forest, and this isn't making a judgment one way or the other, Andy, my question would be, if a landowner were to say you have a goal of creating this critter habitat, and you went out there and found out that the critter habitat was for this other critter, I'm just making up things as we go. We can talk about the timeline of when to do this, that, or the other, but that is kind of arbitrary as well. So for example, if improvement toward Dave's habitat happened to be to do this and do it sooner, then that would be part of a question that a forester would say, if this biologically could be called for and would help his goal, but would not be quite toward your timeline goal, then that's again where bring all this information ahead. Goals can come together and goals can also be convergent. They can converge and be beneficial to each other, but they can also be somewhat divergent as well. So
The key is establishing them in the vertical.
exactly. So if you come about and say, when I ask for goals from landowners before I write plans, there is a ranking, because there can be times when I go, someone says, I use this analogy all the time, as a forester, someone says, I want wildlife on my property. I go, that's great. You're gonna have to be a hell of a lot more specific than that. You tell me you want partridge habitat, and then tell me you turn around and want, bear habitat or something like that. Those two are typically not the same forest. So to say wildlife and just put it in quotation marks is not quite enough. So to get really down into the nitty-gritty of it, there can be concerns over what type of wildlife. There can be concerns over a habitat that would be a special deer yard habitat. I can't necessarily recreate, for example, a deer yard that was cut off of that property when it was last harvested in 1988 either. So do you make a comment about trying to all of a sudden magically wave a magic wand and grow a deer yard? That can't happen either. So you have to take these goals and find out which goals you can bring together and choose which ones are more important to you and on what timeline to act on them. So again, no presumption on anything on my part. Bring about what we have, look at the plan, and the plan will say, here's what I'm seeing. Now, which goal do we have that's more important? What could we do with it to improve this asset, that asset? And then let's look at the timeline to make it happen. Not presuming anything at this point.
It's a good thing you're both in your 50s.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Oh,
Well, thanks, I guess I look pretty good, huh?
okay, well, anyway. Well, you're young, I mean. You're young.
Good, you're both in your 50s. I know he looks this, but.
I'm not yet either. What are you trying to say?
I thought it was just say it's a good thing
I
you're
still
young.
got a couple years left.
Okay.
But I'm glad you said that, Carl. I'll get some mileage on that.
Okay.
So I guess moving forward in the process, I mean, we can certainly have some input at some of the meetings that you
Oh, yeah.
develop the plan.
Definitely.
Then once the plan is developed, how do you execute it? How do you execute a actual harvest from that plan? What's the process? Does it come from, do you folks have the authority to do that? Do the selectmen have to approve that?
I would presume it to be a recommendation from us bumped upstairs, yes?
Right.
Or however that would go.
Does that go to town meeting?
It has not in the past.
Right.
Again,
So it's something
bring it.
Something that you as a committee, you recommend to the selectmen.
Right.
And they
Yeah.
have the authority to approve it. Or not to approve it.
The way I understand it, yes.
So what's the process?
And you have a guarantee in there that you're gonna make everybody happy?
Certainly. Certainly. It's one of our goals, Dave.
So what I tend to do, again, give me rough ideas of goals, if anyone has any, again, we're trying to work on the language of an article to justify and bring about the plan first. The plan being the what do we have out there? Usually I'll go through and do all the mapping, all of any timber stand typing and inventory work of what timber that there is out there, and before I put pen to paper to write recommendations, that's where I go back and say, okay, now I know the what of what we have. And I had the goals previous to that to know what to look for. And then when the recommendations come about, will be the time when I would say, okay, here's now what I see. What would you have us do with it? Where do you want me to try to take this? And that's where the information comes in about how often, how frequently, where, toward what goal, toward what end. So it is definitely a process if it's done correctly.
Do you have a rough idea of what portion of that water is being resource protection?
Whitney, didn't you and I you had something about that when we did the mapping originally? Came back with some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
What exactly are you asking?
The percentage of resource protection, like the parcel itself is 156 acres.
I want to say it might have been
No,
something,
it's
I want to just roughly throw out, I want to say that it wasn't exceeding, say, a third.
No, I'd say 20% max.
Yeah.
I don't know the percent of the parcel. I'd have to look. I can get a number for you. But I believe that that's a buffered wetland to 250.
Well, again, being in resource protection does not prohibit work either.
Right.
So I don't want you to have that, be thinking that that's like, again, if the town wants that to be a hard line of do this, don't do that, work here, don't work there, that can be determined as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some sections that were adjacent to the wetland that was the, well, again, the head of the brook that goes down toward and crosses under the Hebo, back in behind Treadwells and such, just on the north side of the swamp as opposed to the south side. I want to say that it was certainly less than, a third of whatever its total property was. But there's also the stretch that goes up north of the road as well. There's a little piece up adjacent to Hurd's piece back there. So again, find out what we have, and then come back and say, what would you like to do with it, if anything?
I just have one point, Carl. Can you describe briefly the land bank proposal that you and I talked about pertaining to funds received from foreclosed properties being put into a...
Oh, and foreclosed or taken out of tree grove?
No, well, whichever it was, I thought initially it was foreclosed, but taken out of tree grove, using those penalties. I don't know if that's a state landowner transaction, or is that a municipality?
It's a town.
Using that as a land bank funding,
Yeah, just these folks might be interested in
right?
helping us nurture that concept. It won't be this year, but it might be next year.
Right, there's towns that do that, when land is taken out of tree growth, there's a penalty. Foreclosed properties, put that into a land bank fund so that the town can, increase their town forest. Wells has been very successful at that, town of Wells, amazingly enough, but they've had
We are probably one of the last generations that is going to be able to have a significant impact on their surrounding landscape. I think we all realize the importance of trying to maintain and improve where we can our surroundings, particularly in this day and age. And there are ways to do that, to ramp up our abilities to improve the condition of the landscape as we pass it on to our youngsters. There's some tools that I think sometimes we could work together and put a nice proposal before town meeting that would meet those help us meet those obligations through the vehicle, similar to what Carl was talking about, land bank. You could increase the town forest areas and the areas that are viable, deer yards, et cetera, et cetera.
Shapley's done a lot, increasing their town forest.
Yeah, Shapley's got some serious acreage.
Shapley, what?
Shapley has a lot of acreage.
Yes, they do. Yep.
And they have
They've recently
a long
increased.
history of support through various means of adding to the town forest. They even have a scholarship over there for a student anticipating going into a forestry career. It's a small amount of money, but, the intention is there. Sometime in this year, you guys probably know Nate Gallant.
Yes.
He's very active on the Conservation Committee over there, and he used to be a forester, right, or was he in Fish and Game?
Who?
Nate Gallant.
Is he on the forestry committee?
I know he is over there, but was his background in game warden, or did he ever work?
Last I talked with him, he was working for Hancock Lumber.
Yeah.
I thought some state employment preceded that.
Which may or may not make him a forester. I didn't think so. But
Anyway, he's expressed the willingness to come by sometime and give us a history and some of the tools that they use over there to maintain and promote the notion of, a healthy town forest across many perspectives.
Okay, any other questions or concerns tonight?
I got one bill for the copying work that York County Registry of Deeds billed me $10 the other day when I went down there. Who to submit that to, but if you want to
That's it, disband.
If you
No
wanna
more
just
committee, can't pay it.
Take a vote and approve that, and I'll go in and bring it into Jen.
You're bringing it to Jen?
Yeah, that's, unless there's an alternative.
Okay.
Sounds like a good
We
good
got-
I just
idea.
wanna
Go
pass
for
the
it.
hat or
The
something.
$10 invoice here. Is there a motion that we pay this bill?
We have the town pay it, right? Submit it for payment.
Don't we have, you don't want to
Have the
vote?
money to pay.
Think it's all. Anything else? Okay, I guess we'll adjourn. Thank you all for coming. Yep.